I just turned 4. Yes, I mean my business, not my actual age. I cannot believe that it's been that long, but also it feels like it's been a lot longer because I started side hustling in 2015. So really, I'm nearing my 10th anniversary, but I didn't go full time until 2020. So it's actually only about 4 years since I've been full time. But that's pretty cool, right? So I figured let's celebrate. It's not quite the half decade mark yet, but I thought we'd celebrate by sharing my story a little bit. You can see where I came from and why I keep telling you, if you've watched other videos on my channel, why I'm a graphic designer turned web designer turned entrepreneur and what gives me that experience. So if you're curious how I got here, grab a cup of coffee. I'll try to keep it short, but we all know I'm long-winded. So let's see how short I can actually make this story. I've always been a creative person. I used to enjoy playing with, I say play, acrylic paint in high school. I talked to my art teacher back then if I could make art or some kind of creative profession a reality because I just didn't know what the options were. Oddly enough, he told me to look into medical illustration. I realized that that involves some sort of creative talent, yes, but not talent that I have, nor did I want. But it did allow me to start the journey towards at least enrolling myself in the right part of college, starting in the art program. So anyway, I digress. I started college in 2005, but that first year I took no art classes. The second, kind of my sophomore year, is when I started to dive into actual art classes, and that's when I started realizing where my strengths were. So about that same time, actually, I got my first in-house design job at $6 an hour. And I did those classes alongside a full-time job. So I have been some form of in-house designer on and off. I did other things in the interim, especially when we moved out of state. I was a kennel manager for a while. I was a receptionist at an eye care clinic. I don't remember everything else. But anyway, so mostly I was doing design since 2006, whether it was freelance, even though I would never have called it that. I was always doing something fun on the computer. That ended up being something that I really liked to do. So fast forward 5-ish years, and I got my first full-time, long-term in-house design job in 2012, I think it was, and I stayed there until 2020. So what made me decide to bust out, break the glass ceiling, blah, 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 blah? I was in my late 20s, and I was just thinking, is this it? I felt like I was having a midlife crisis, but in my 20s. As you know, millennials do, with student loan debt, no benefits, no health insurance, living paycheck to paycheck. That's worthy of a crisis, right? So I just kept thinking, is this what my work life is going to be like until I retire? And can I even think about retiring at this stage? What would I retire with or on? How do you stop working when you're living check to check? So that was kind of the start of it. I was like, okay, well, I just need more money. So I'm just going to keep doing what I'm good at, and I'm going to just do this work, but for other people outside of my day job. And that's where it started in 2015. So I had 3 years of working full time with no intention of doing anything else. I loved the job for a long time, and then I got kind of resentful for the lack of flexibility because, as it turns out, as a control freak, hello, the problem is me, while I am capable of, and I did quite well with on the surface, I don't internally enjoy being told what to do. Surprise! Not much of us do enjoy that, actually, but it just felt particularly toxic to me, that environment. The people were great individually, but working in that environment over time became toxic for me as a creative, and I really needed a different environment. But it was kind of like the devil you know. I knew what to expect where I was versus I could be walking into something worse if I had switched jobs. We were kind of in a rural area, and so options and opportunities were limited unless I wanted to drive quite a distance to and from work. No public transport down there. So I stayed for a long time, probably too long, but it was an excellent learning experience. All of the stuff that I've told you to date, probably around handling bad client feedback, no client feedback, managing revisions, learning how to deal with teams and communication and all kinds of stuff like that. I learned what to do and what not to do from being in that position. So it was a good learning experience. I don't think that I would change it, but it wasn't the long-term fit for me. I needed to get out. In 2020, COVID started to affect our area, and unfortunately, it affected the business that I was working for. Business went down quite a bit. It was dramatic. So we went from having 4 designers down to 3, and then we were all cut to part-time, and 2 of the 3 of us worked from home, so we didn't have to commute in because we lived further away. So that gave me my first taste again. I had done this earlier, backing up. I had a position when I first went to college, and then I moved out of state, and they allowed me to keep my position and work remotely. So that was my true first full-time work from home experience. And then when I came back, it was a little jarring to get back into the swing of being in an office, as we all know. So when COVID hit and this happened again, and I was allowed to go home and work from home, I realized I have the self-discipline to do this and do it well. I can get a lot more done in the quiet of my home when the phones are not ringing and the emails generally leave me alone. And most of all, people don't stop into our department and start chatting and distract us from getting work done. So I could do the work in probably half the time, really quickly, send it out. All of our send-off and production-related processes were remote. So all I had to do was connect remotely to the machine and send it on to the printers, and it was an easy-peasy process. And then they started to bring us back. And I thought, this feels like going backwards. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. It felt like the cat with the arched back and the hair puffed out and the claws coming out. And it was like, no, this is not for me. I need a change. And so I decided that I would put full effort in. And then about that time, my employer remembered a conversation that I'd had the year before where I told him, I'm beginning to feel burnt out on this. I'm probably going to need to take a break. I need to phase myself out. I'm not sure I want to do this particular kind of work anymore. And when 2020 hit, 6-ish months later, he was like, I know that you said you needed a break. How about a furlough? Do you think that would help? And I took it. That was the start of basically when I quit my job. So I took the furlough, which means I got unemployment for a few months while I figured things out. And that was super helpful. That was kind of the jump start to my full-time process. And that was June of 2020. So it's been a long time coming. I've been a creative and I've been playing on the computer, playing at design on a computer since, I don't know, 2001. So like 25 years. And then I went to college for it and started my first graphics class in 2006. I got my first real job as an in-house designer in 2006. That lasted for a couple of years. And then in 2012, I got my second job. This one lasted for almost 10 years. And then I quit in 2020 via furlough because of COVID. And their business was slowly coming back and we were moving out of state. So it was a nice seamless transition for me. And they were able to fill my position after a while, thankfully. So all that to say, it's a lot of corporate kind of experience, small businesses mostly, but employee experience where you are designing as the face of the company and you have to act a certain way and you have to handle clients a certain way and there are certain processes. And that was when I realized I didn't like operating that way because the people who managed or controlled what processes were happening were not directly involved with the design, and so they didn't know which stages of that process were frustrating, were kind of roadblocks, which ones were essentially huge wastes of time. And so that was kind of why when I jumped into my process, I ended up taking a few courses to learn what other designers are doing on their own. I got a new set of contracts. I created a portal system in Notion, and I really put more effort into, I want to be rigid with this. I want to have a structure that will allow me to hold boundaries because I tend to be a people pleaser and I didn't want to let my clients rule my life. I had the foresight to know that I could potentially enjoy my work so much that I could respond to emails at 8 p.m. or start working as soon as I woke up in the morning. And those processes and structures helped me hold better boundaries than I would have had. So I say all that to say it took me a really long time to get moving. I know early on I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I had people in my life that were sort of like inspirations. So I was basically like, if they can do it, I can do it. That's just the kind of person that I am. And there were people in my life that told me, look, I'm terrified that this is not going to work as fast as you want it to, or the way you want it to, or you're not going to make the money that you want, and it's going to be heartbreaking and you're going to quit. And I don't want to see that happen. And I know that was coming from a good place, but essentially they were right. And I didn't get heartbroken. It just made me more determined to make it work. So luckily, over the last 9 years, I've had lots of time to sit with the feeling of this is taking way too long. I don't know how to make it move faster. I don't know what I don't know. Imposter syndrome, fear, not good enough, all of these things, right? Trying to learn how to market and how to run a business and how to make a profit and loss statement, and who does my accounting? How do I handle taxes and contracts and invoicing and God, taxes. Those are not the fun parts of the business. But I will say that over time, I've gotten used to doing things messy, because when you don't know what you're doing, you really have no other choice, right? Because if you don't do it messy, then you don't do it at all, and it never gets done. So that's what I did. I did things messy. I taught myself how to market. It was messy. In the beginning, I had no clients to speak of except from people I actually knew in real life. And fun fact, if you can't find a client, all you have to do is tell people that you want a client and that you want a client for this very specific thing. And probably you know somebody who knows somebody who may know somebody who is looking for that exact thing. And they can be your first client. They're the first trial test or whatever. And there you go. Word of mouth. That's what happened with me. So I just looked around and was like, who needs a website? Because I'm going to try doing websites now. I'm tired of print design. And that's what I did. I did my website, and then I did a few family members' websites, and then they knew people who were doing websites, and then they reached out to me and I did their website, and it kind of spiraled from there, throwing in also some other print related stuff because that's been my background. So I did some t-shirt designs. Yes, you heard me. I can do that too. Logo designs, brochures. I did booklets, pamphlets, business cards, posters, pretty much anything you can imagine. And eventually I decided I don't really want to do any of that print stuff anymore. I've done that for too long. Websites is where my real joy is. I'm going to start doing websites, and I'm going to stop doing everything else. And then eventually it got to where it's not that I don't love doing websites, but I love teaching more, and so now I am adding that to the mix as well. So because of next week's topic, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what it was like starting my own business in a way that I thought I was supposed to versus what I actually wanted, because that is probably the most interesting part of this story. So in 2015, my business was called something like Caitlin Deagle Designs. Really original, I know. Couldn't think of anything else. So a bunch of people put their minds together with me, and we came up with Studio 1862. That was because the cabin we were living in at the time, most of the original portion of it was in fact built in 1862, and that was the half of the house where my office was. So my studio was in a house built in 1862. So it was Studio 1862 from 2016-ish to 2020. In 2020, I was sick to death of my own business. I had changed the fonts a bazillion times. I had changed the colors a bazillion times. I had changed the logo design a few times. I had totally redone the website a few times. Nothing seemed to stick because none of it ever felt like, this is it. This is right. I don't know. The vibe was just never right. Well, in 2020 when I had all this time on my hands because I was home for the first time full time and didn't know what to do with myself. Still trying to find clients and taking courses and trying to learn all the things. I thought, well, I've got time. I'll build a template shop. So I started building a template shop. And then I thought, well, that doesn't really make sense to put in my studio business, so I'll just make a separate business. Yeah, that was smart. 2 hosting plans, 2 email marketing newsletter lists, 2 social media platforms on every platform. That was not a great decision. So as soon as I did it and I started building that website over in Showit for some reason, because Showit has e-commerce, right? Wrong. I decided that the new business, which I named Launch the Damn Thing, when I realized that I hated showing up for my other business because I didn't like the vibe that it had. I was showing up as corporate Caitlin, like being someone else's employee, and this is how I act as a professional adult. I didn't like being that person all the time. I didn't really like being that person 8 hours of the day. It's exhausting to not fully be yourself. So when I started building Launch the Damn Thing and I started showing up as myself because I felt for some reason like I could, and I picked a loud and bold font and loud and bold color palette, I decided I have to merge these and I've got to throw out one of them, and it's got to be the one that I don't like. So basically, I did exactly that. I shut down the profiles that were Launch the Damn Thing. I renamed the old ones. I archived some of the posts, but not all of them. And I rebranded everything. I closed down the old site. I started a brand new one, and everything has been Launch the Damn Thing since then. I've gotten lots of wonderful feedback. Thank you guys so much for the compliments that you've given me on the name. I promise it was an accident. I'm not that smart. It just felt like I'm ready to launch the damn thing. And then I was like, oh, yeah, that's a name. So thank you guys for all the feedback. Over the time, I realized I really probably should protect that, right? So I decided at some point to trademark my business name, not the logo, because I want to be able to change up the design if I feel like it and not have to go through a bunch of legal rigmarole to do that. But I did decide to trademark the business name. So if you want to hear more about what that process looks like, then stay tuned, because that's what I'm talking about in the next video. Got you on pins and needles with that one, I know. Anyway, I hope this has been kind of interesting for you. If not, go check out the other 50 plus videos that are already on my channel, and I won't blame you, because I don't know, not every aspect of everybody's life is interesting, and I was kind of hoping that I could make this interesting, but I don't know, it just feels like I'm just telling my story. So I don't know if that's helpful for you or not. Make sure you like and subscribe so that you'll get notified when I come out with next week's video, so you can see kind of what that trademarking process looks like and whether or not it was helpful for me.